Here we go. All right. It is a beautiful Friday, man. Find excuses to win. That's what we do. No negative thoughts allowed. I mean, we got a rolling show today with executive producer Brendan Martin. Love that guy. He is working behind the scenes, making this magic happen. Doug Dean in Birmingham. Frank Duffy down in Nolans. Nolans. I like it when you talk to a Yankee, they say New Orleans. You're like, what?
That's
what was that?
That's like fingernails on the blackboard.
No, Frank, here's another one a lot of people say outside of the South. New Orleans. You're like, what? New Orleans.
Well, actually, us locals call it New Orleans. There's the uptowners that have, my snooty brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
New Orleans has that Y in it.
Well, it's an awesome place, man. Hey, look, we got a great one today. Kevin Scarbinsky, U.S.
great Scarbo.
Writer, U.S. basketball writer, Hall of Fame writer, is going to join us in about 10 minutes or so. And Brad Bellamy come on later in the show, but it's going to be wide open, man. Round Table Friday, and guys, take a picture with your phone of the QR code. Be a subscriber. Share the link. We are broadcasting simultaneously on X, Facebook, and YouTube, and working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes to keep growing this brand. And you're going to see it. You're going to be watching it happen. But guys, Frank, I know you are in New Orleans. Super Bowl's a week from Sunday. Doug in Birmingham, pounding out great content. This basketball season we got going on is incredible. And I'll tell you what we're going to do today. We're going to become a safe space of not talking about the portal and NIL as much as we can, because Brendan made a good point. He said, Rob, he goes, you're killing it. He goes, everybody knows what it is. So, Tony Barnhart corrected me the other night. Tony said, look, that's what people talk about when it's out of season. But once the games start, people don't care. But you know what? We're going to make it to where people can come here. We're going to talk about the games, and I'm going to let my team members on the round table have at it. So whoever wants to start first.
It's a sanctuary city for those who want to talk basketball. And look, my Auburn brethren, I'm just going to have to live vicariously through y'all. Our asses are getting beat like a friggin' rented mule at the border.
Well, you're not bad, Frank.
LSU's a good team. LSU gave us some fight the other night, but man, this Auburn team has got some erasers, don't they, Frank?
Oh my gosh. And let me tell you, I think this might be Auburn's best team. I think Bruce Pearl has put together a team that's really got some staying power in the tournament. This could be the year, guys. This could be the year.
Well, Private First Class Dean reporting for duty, Rob, sir. And our long national nightmare is over. I speak of the football season.
Yeah.
Thank God that blissfully ended. And I'm going to see if I can increase your state of Ohio demographic here, Rob. Is there a more fraudulent national champion than Ohio State?
No.
Let me give you the data points. No, all kudos to Buckeye Nation, but they couldn't beat Michigan, kind of got drilled by them, didn't win their conference championship, and needed to spend $20 million for a Band-Aid roster, and it worked. And Ryan Day's on top of the world right now. I guess that nullifies, their corporal works of mercy for us Catholics, Duffy, right?
Absolutely.
So the sin was losing to Michigan 4 in a row. I think he nullified. He completed a corporal work of mercy, giving the Buckeye Nations a trophy. But I'm just thrilled that it's basketball season. And I'll tell you, Rob, what Auburn needs to do: close the deal. Auburn's a 69% probability, which is way ahead of the Kentucky, Alabama, whoever the runner-ups are, to win the SEC regular season. And the way this works, you got to go ahead and win something regular season, because we've seen it. How many times we've seen it in March Madness? You'll get a beautiful one-line seed, and you like the region, probably Lexington, Kentucky, or somewhere like that. And there'll be some team that gets red hot out of nowhere. Yep. So you got no guarantees getting to the Final Four. I don't care how good you are.
The 8 seed, the 9 seed that come out, because that's such a grinder game, they come out with, they're sharp as attack. You played Little Sisters of the Poor as the 1 seed. So that's always a tough game. But then you got the 4 seed sitting there waiting on you. And let me tell you something. You know, the 4 seed is a great seed that normally is like, you talk about penance, you talk about Sister Mary Margaret wrapping your knuckles with the yardstick, corporal punishment. The 4 seed is corporal punishment. They got to go to a different sector, but they're normally good enough to be a 2 or a 3 seed in their own sector. But they've been put in, like Rob says, timeout. So it is no easy task. But I think Auburn, again, I don't want to jinx y'all. I don't want to, give y'all any bad mojo or gree. But I think Auburn is an absolute shoe-in for a number 1 seed from what I'm seeing.
As we sit, but then trouble lies ahead. You know, most of us who are rational thought, as good as Auburn looked, and all the metrics are off the chart, as good as Auburn looked, they've been flirting with fire lately, like letting games be in jeopardy late, especially on the road. And, in a short period of time, LSU will be winning a game like the other night instead of making it close. But this Saturday, going to Ole Miss tomorrow, Ole Miss quietly, of course, they went to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, which is a tall order. But this is Ole Miss's highest KenPom rating since it won the SEC West in 1998. So this is a sneaky good. I'm not going to be shocked if Auburn finally drops a road game tomorrow.
Tomorrow is going to be a living hell for Auburn to go into the pavilion, because Ole Miss, they lost 3 in a row. They lost 2 of them by 1 point, and then they got a win. So they broke the streak, but they've lost 3 of their last 4. Chris Beard, Wes Flanagan, former Auburn player and coach, they will be sky high for this game.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't see how you can go undefeated in a league like this. But right now, Auburn they've got the number 1 ranking and also number 1 strength of schedule. I'll tell you another school that scares the hell out of me is Florida. When you look at the size, if
they can make
bring
a Final
that
Four.
Igor Handglotten guy that's like 7.5 feet tall back.
Shaq had to look up to him. They did like a little promo thing, and Shaq was like pretending to like give somebody on the Florida staff hell, and all of a sudden Igor walked behind him, and dude, when Shaq turned around, Shaq's top of his head came up to Igor's nose.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe that.
He is a giant. They have Franz Beard talks about this. The 5, if Handglotten comes back, that is 5 giants, 25 tall fouls to give, and they ain't gonna foul them all out. That's the thing. That Florida's 18-2, Auburn's 19-1. Then you look at Alabama with Nate Oates, the Fighting Oats. He benched Mark Sears in the second half against LSU. Coaches don't do that very often anymore. Alabama.
You know why he did that, Rob, right?
Because
I'm going to compliment Oates. They can score on a given night. Now, when they're cold from 3, that his formula's got problems.
Yeah,
but they're not cold from 3 very often, especially at home. But he's sending a message to his arguably the guy that was going to be a National Player of the Year candidate coming into the season, and then Cooper Flagg and Janai Broom happened.
Yeah,
but Sears, he's sending a message that we are going to have to be more elite defensively.
Yeah.
And he's doing that for what? February 15th. He knows this Auburn team's, if you want to win the SEC regular season, Alabama's got to hold serve. They know that in Tuscaloosa on February 15th. So I commend Oates they know they can score, but he's trying to get that defense to play at a more efficient level.
You know, what you're right about Alabama, and I'm looking, Scarbo will be on here in just a minute, but they love that high up-tempo scoring in the 90s a lot. Kids love that. But they're going to be games when you got to slow it down. And, I looked at LSU jumped out against Auburn. They got 3 guys that can really shoot the ball well, but just my body language, view real quick, Frank, is it's like they're looking for the other shoe to drop. It's like they were like expecting all, and then you could see the intensity with Auburn, and then you got the laughter from Chad Baker Mazzara, who is an assassin. But the Auburn was like, okay, That's enough. You go crazy.
Rob, it's like the dog that gets the newspaper rolled up and whacked so many times. You're just waiting for when the bottom's going to fall out. That's what this LSU team is suffering. And look, it takes a couple good wins to get that confidence up. Look, we know we're not going. I mean, I'd be shocked if we snuck into the dance. We're another NIT year. The same old record. But I will tell you, LSU's got the talent to upset the apple cart on a couple of these teams. Yeah. Florida, an Ole Miss. If you go sleeping and you come into Dale Brown Court, you're gonna leave with an L. But look, we know we're not putting anything together. It's another rebuild for next year. But I will tell you, as a fan of a team that's not in it, just watching this SEC basketball season, it's very entertaining. It's very interesting. I always love my buddy John Brady's post. He does all the Tiger radio games. In fact, I'm gonna see him up in Athens in a couple weeks when they come up. I always go over that Wednesday night 9:00 game. Now I don't get home to Big Canoe until 2:00 in the morning, which does not make run. But I do love going over and watching it. But John, he has such a vibrant love for the game of basketball that when he's even doing LSU games, man, we're getting recaps from all the other games. It's just so you're immersed in the season. And I think we're going to get a lot of teams in the dance, but I think we're top heavy. I think Auburn is the class of this conference this year. And I think it's Auburn's year, a bullshit Virginia thing like
too soon.
I think this is potentially you guys' year.
It's going to be fun. Yeah.
Lenardi, hello, Kevin Scarbo. We'll get you right in here. Lenardi, guys, has the SEC putting 13 teams in the show. That's crazy. And look at Vanderbilt is sneaky good all of a sudden.
All aboard the hype train. Woo! Kevin
I don't think it'll be 13. I think somebody's going to slip.
Just rode in from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, and he's going to look. Kevin, Franz Beard one time said the Big Ten has 14 members, and they're going to get 17 bids to the tournament. This year, the SEC, Joe, have you met Joe Lenardi?
I have. I don't know him well, but I have met him. Yeah, I saw him speak to the Birmingham Tip-Off Club some years ago.
Yeah. So this team, this basketball, we're talking a lot right now. And Brendan just texted me that Todd Golden said Micah Handglotton likely will not play this year, but they've still got 4 giants on that team. Kind of looking at this SEC basketball race, you've got Auburn, Florida, Alabama, those 3, especially at the top. Long way to go, but Kevin, it's got to be one of the best we've ever seen in the SEC.
It is, without a doubt. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad that we are here on the last day of January talking about basketball and the quality of it, the high level of it, and it's being led by the 2 teams in the state of Alabama, which does my heart good as someone who loves the game and has loved the game, well, since I was a kid, since I was shoveling snow off the court off the driveway in Pottsville back in the day so I could get some shots up when I was 8, 9, 10. Sonny
Smith.
Well, we do need to remember that basketball was not a non-entity around here until the last 7, 8 years. There were some great periods of basketball in this state. Now, Alabama has had more success than anyone else. Really, Alabama's had as much success as anyone in the SEC all time outside of Kentucky.
Yeah.
But I was lucky when I got here in the 80s, when I got into this business. Auburn was in the midst, had just started a run. They went to 5 straight NCAA tournaments. UAB was doing similar things. I think they went to 7 straight under Gene Bartow. Wim Sanderson was winning the SEC tournament just about every year, at least getting to the finals. He was going to the Sweet 16 every other year. So basketball was at a really high level back then. Now, obviously, we've seen ebbs and flows, but we've never seen anything like what we're experiencing right now. When you look at Joe Lunardi's bracket yesterday, and his number 1 overall seed is Auburn, and his number 2 overall seed is Alabama. That is
not Duke.
Astounding.
Amazing.
Not Duke, not Kentucky, not North Carolina, Auburn, and Alabama. I think we need to really step back for a second and appreciate what is happening here. And by the way, the countdown, guys, to iBob Armageddon Chapter 1 is now at 15 days.
Kevin, as I've said many times, only the paranoid survive, and the corollary to that is just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. And Lunardi is setting us up. He's gonna. The SEC will brutalize each other. Seems like we always do in nearly every sport. And there will be some narrative, some manipulated data by which, and Cooper Flagg will have a lot to do with it. Duke can get the number 1 overall seed by mid-March. And as long as our teams are on the one line, that's all you can ask. And I'll tell you this, a tribute to how basketball is king for now in the state of Alabama. And I realize fans still love football a nudge above that, especially Alabama, the way they've been winning under Saban, and they'll come back. But it is not impossible to see an Auburn versus Alabama perhaps semi in the Final Four.
Woo! You got,
wow.
Hold on, Doug. You got to raise your sights.
The national championship.
It is not, and you can look it up because I wrote this the day the season began, the day the games began in college basketball. That we could see an Auburn versus Alabama national championship game.
It'll depend on seeding, or regions.
It will depend on where they are placed in the bracket if they are indeed both 1 seeds. So, look, there are 2 people from the state of Alabama on the selection committee. One of them is the Alabama athletic director, Greg Byrne. The other is the Samford athletic director, Martin Newton, son of C.M. Newton. And Samford has a terrific program itself under Bucky McMillan, and they probably will be back in the tournament again as they were last year. I cannot imagine a bracket that, and I know they're not supposed to rig these things. Rig's not the right word, but arrange certain matchups. Yeah. But if they are both 1 seeds and they are slated to meet in the semifinals, not the finals, I'm going to have a few bones to pick with Mr. Byrne and Mr.
All hell will break loose
here. Well, and I think there is, I don't know whether it's television or politics of, spreading the love across the Power 4 or 5 basketball conferences. I get confused between football. How many power conferences are there in basketball? It's kind of
5.
misleading.
You have to include the Big East.
Fair. Yeah. And then you have one of these teams from out of nowhere that can cause problems and make a deep run. But I will be paranoid in that instance that they don't want an all SEC national championship game.
Well, they really didn't want it in football, but they didn't have a choice. The way teams in this conference performed on a number of occasions. So, look, and we are obviously getting ahead of ourselves,
of course.
But it is to the point right now, and this is going to, again, if some of the things that I've said this year, if I had said them 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the people with the white jackets that buckle in the back would have come to take me away.
Bryce,
I'm telling you guys, at this point, with what we've seen from both Auburn and Alabama, it will be a disappointment to each program if they don't reach the Final Four.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Kevin, real quick, I want to ask you, while we're talking basketball, a football question. The numbers were down about 3 million for the national championship game this year. And maybe it's because it went too late into January and people were worn out with football. But my theory is you didn't have an SEC team in there. And when you get that, you get the whole block of the Southeastern Conference footprint. I mean, we will watch and support each other. Not everybody, but we do. like no other conference in America. And then you get Notre Dame, where a lot of people watch them because they hate them. And after that, Ohio State's got to be at a clear number 2 for the most hated team in America. The Ohio State University, stuff like that drives people crazy. But they're down 3 million, and they thought it was cool to not have 5 or 6 SEC teams in there. Well, look how much money it cost in terms of viewership and sponsorships.
Yeah, you have to be careful extrapolating the meaning of ratings.
Yeah, okay.
One thing that I was interested to learn, and I don't have the numbers in my head, but how many fewer cable households there are, how many fewer people are getting ESPN than 10 years ago? We've all heard the term cord cutting. People are, there are just a lot of, and not every service gets ESPN. And now you can pick and choose more so than ever before what channels or groups of channels you get. And I think that's part of it. But I would argue the idea of hate watching that
it's terrible.
Hate watching. I think there was more hate watching of Notre Dame back in the day. Notre Dame hasn't really been that relevant. They've been good. They've gotten to a couple of national championship games, but they have not been a major player on the national scene for a long time. So I think the hate watching of Notre Dame pales in comparison to the hate watching of Alabama or Georgia or LSU from around the country. So I think you're spot on there, Rob, that not having an SEC team in the championship game definitely hurt the viewership. So that's why it's going to be interesting to see. Basketball is more fragmented, obviously, because you have more. You have 350 something Division I programs, and everybody will watch the first 2 days of the tournament to see which of those 1 or 2 seeds might get upset, because it always happens. Maybe not a 1 or 2, but certainly a 2 or a 3 or a 4. Somebody's going down early, as Auburn unfortunately found out last year. Sorry to bring that up, Doug. But and really,
Ivy League.
You look at Auburn. I looked this up the other day. Bruce Pearl was at the Tip-Off Club a week or so ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. And since he got that program rolling in 2017, 2018, they won the SEC regular season that year. Now this is a 7+ year period, so this is a significant slice of time. They have more wins, more SEC wins, more overall wins, SEC tournament wins, NCAA tournament wins, SEC regular season championships, SEC tournament championships, and trips to the Final Four than the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah.
And wow. Kentucky was not garbage every year in that period. Now they had the 9-16 year after COVID. They had, but that's amazing to contemplate. And if you want to put a ground zero is not the right phrase, but if you want to put a starting point on this, when SEC basketball, and we can all speculate, obviously Mike Slive was not happy with the performance in the postseason. Yeah. He did some things. Greg Sankey continued that. But when Auburn hired Bruce Pearl, that changed a lot in this conference. It changed a lot in this state. And never forget that when Auburn was going to the Final Four in 2019, Alabama was hiring Nate Oates. Yeah. There was I don't know if you want to say a causal relationship there, but those were not unrelated.
Yeah.
And man, Bruce Pearl, God, it's going to pain me to tell this truth. I think Bruce Pearl, Kevin, is the greatest pure head coach in Auburn athletics history. But I think Pat Dye, my coach for all time, Coach Pat Dye, is the most significant, historically impacting head coach in Auburn history. Your take on that?
I've seen that idea start to pop up, and the very thought that would be a discussion point, a serious discussion point.
I'm not enjoying it. Is
astounding and tells you what Auburn basketball has accomplished under Bruce Pearl. When they hired him the day after, from my column from his introductory press conference compared his hiring in basketball to Alabama hiring Nick Saban in football. And I said, very likely one day we'll look back and say that Bruce Pearl did for basketball in the state of Alabama, what Nick Saban did for football.
You know what? And Kevin, I don't want to box you in, but if you think back to the heyday of your writing at the Birmingham News, is it fair to say that, of course, you love the compelling drama of Auburn and Alabama, whether they were having down years that are fun to write about, much less big years where the Iron Bowl is to decide potentially the national champion? I know that you love that, but didn't you have a slight lean for in-state basketball when those two teams, one or both, are playing really well?
Oh, I think
personally.
Yeah. I mean, I think that has come through. You know, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to basketball in this state. It sounds like ancient history now, and it really is. It was 40 years ago, just about. My first year as the Auburn beat writer for the Birmingham News, Auburn went to the Elite Eight. They were one game away from going to the Final Four. Not just one game away. With 3 minutes left, they were tied with Louisville and never nervous Purvis Ellison.
Yep.
And Louisville took control in those last 3 minutes. So Auburn was that close to going to the Final Four.
Was that the
year? Very first year. It was 1986. Chuck Person just dominated everybody in his path. Walter Berry from St. John's, who'd been the National Player of the Year.
Yep.
UNLV had a great player whose name escapes me. And they were, people were shocked. They didn't know how good Chuck was. They didn't know how good Auburn was. That was Frank Ford and Gerald White in the backcourt. Yeah. I think Chris Morris was a freshman. Jeff Moore was almost automatic, shooting jumpers from the free throw area. And Sonny Smith's offense would get better and better as the season went on. They were so crisp. And they were, again, that close to going to the Final Four. And that same year, Alabama was in the Sweet 16. And unfortunately, they had to play Kentucky for a third time. Frank might remember that's when LSU, Alabama, and Kentucky were all sent to the same region. They all ended up, there were 3 of the 4 teams in the Sweet 16 in Atlanta. And LSU was the one that came out and LSU went to the Final Four that year in '86. So SEC basketball didn't just start in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It's been pretty good at times in the past. So this is, though, I keep telling people, with what's happening in this state, these are the good old days. They really are.
Was that Sonny Smith Elite Eight run? Was that when Sonny had to win 4 straight days in the SEC tournament to get?
That was 85.
That was the year after. Yeah, that in '85. That's when Sonny, and this is another.
He was fired.
This is another marker on the basketball history in this state. Sonny was so frustrated with trying to get people into. I don't know if all the names were on the marquee at that time, but what became Beard Eves Memorial Coliseum. He was so frustrated at getting people in the arena. He was banging his head. He had been to the NCAA tournament for the first time with Barkley in '84, Charles's last year. '85, he can't, he couldn't take it anymore. He decided to resign. And then like you said, they win 4 games in 4 days, beat Alabama in the final in the SEC tournament to go to the NCAA tournament. Then they get to the Sweet 16. They end up losing here in Birmingham to North Carolina.
Yep.
And Sonny unresigned, which was, everyone was thankful that he did. Certainly those of us who covered him and came to know him and just enjoyed being around him. And then they went to the NCAA tournament, 2 more years after that Elite Eight run. So it was
3 more,
pretty special. But here's how bad it was, guys. I may have told you the story before. I think it was my first year. So covering Auburn. So it was 85, 86. In the preseason, Auburn had to move an exhibition game from Auburn to Columbus, Georgia at the last minute because someone at the university had scheduled an REM concert in the basketball arena, but they didn't tell the basketball coach.
Wow.
And guess who had to move? The basketball team, not the concert.
Kevin, I hope Rob and Duff don't mind me pivoting to, of all things, women's athletics. But if y'all have not seen on, I think it's SEC Network, it's titled Giant Killers, a story of the Lady Longhorns. And this goes way back into the 80s. But Donna Lopiano, this fireball of an administrator, came in, and it was right when Title IX had been passed. And the reason I'm bringing it up is that, and I've got 3 daughters. You guys may have a daughter or know people that deserve a fair shot in athletics. We've seen women's basketball be sensational. Pat Summitt, what Kim Mulkey's done at LSU, it is possible for it to really generate fan attendance and revenue. But I guess my question is this, and back then, Darrell Royal, Bo Schembechler, President Ford, there were forces, we can call them sexist. That's probably not fair in terms of historical context, but they were deathly afraid that Title IX was going to siphon money away from men's sports and dilute the quality of football and basketball. My question is, with all that's coming down both in Supreme Court rulings, lawsuits, and how Title IX apparently is interpreted right now, how do you see the future of the major women's sports keeping a foothold going forward, and what might we expect in the next several years?
Well, from my perspective, and Frank, is this true? I read this on Twitter, so you always have to take that with a grain of salt, unless you really know the source, and you know the source knows what they're talking about. Did LSU have more people at the women's game last night than they had for the visit by the #1 Auburn Tigers the night before in the PMAC?
Would shock me.
Wow.
That's what someone tweeted, that their attendance was larger last night.
Kevin, I would have thought the Auburn fans in Baton Rouge would have solved that.
By the way, we have more gymnastic events for Livy Dunn and the LSU Tiger gymnasts off their national championship season than men's or women's basketball. It's overflowing from gymnastics. But I got a tidbit of info though. Inside info, I might get in trouble for this, but at a duck hunting camp in Lake Charles, one of my good buddies invited Scott Woodward to the camp. LSU women's basketball still lost between $7 and $9 million last year. Still, as popular as it was.
How could you lose between 7 and 9 million? Was there alcohol involved in that conversation? I mean, that's.
Hey, look, at a Louisiana hunting camp, there's always alcohol involved. I'm just telling you what I heard secondhand from a very, very high, powerful source. That even as powerful and as popular as Kim Mulkey and LSU women's basketball is, it still loses money.
Well.
To Doug's point about Title IX,
challenging.
Look, we all know football, SEC football runs the whole damn roost. The money comes in, sucks at the tit. Even probably runs at a deficit when you count all of our teams.
Did y'all see the numbers on Texas this year? Their athletic department, they made $334 million or something like that, and they netted $6 million.
Alabama, let's add a couple of data points. Alabama lost $24 million in 24. I read that was heavily related to cost with the coaching search. I don't quite understand that. Auburn was in the black by a couple of million, but the financials are interesting and there's pressure points. I don't think that Gen Z and millennials are going to support Tigers Unlimited, Tide Pride, paying X amount of dollars for the privilege to then buy tickets to a football game. So
Doug, most of that was therapist cost.
Yeah, especially if you're Auburn. So Kevin, how do they balance the books and keep these? Are you going to see more programs shuttling some of their lesser revenue sports? How do you get the financials to work going forward?
Well, I am by no means a financial expert, but when is someone going to take a hard look at how these athletic departments spend their money and your money?
A Doge. We need a Doge for the athletic department.
I have railed against the fiscal mismanagement of college athletics, primarily from the standpoint of coaches' contracts. It's an epidemic. Arkansas State in basketball, their head coach Brian Hodgson was an assistant to Nate Oates at Alabama. He's been there a year and a half. They just announced a contract extension. A year and a half.
Yeah.
Now, he's done a nice job. He's turned it around. They won the regular season last year. They're in first place again this year. A year and a half, though? Why? We tear up contracts and throw out even more ridiculous, larger contracts for one good season. And then we put in these absurd buyouts that end up costing these schools. That's why Alabama, as you said, Doug, that was supposedly the reason why they actually, their football program lost money last year, was because of expenses related to buyouts in the coaching transition from Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer. When is someone going to hold these athletic departments, athletic directors, athletic associations? When are they going to hold them accountable for their profligate spending?
Well, Kevin, to your point, the highest paid state employee in most of the southeastern footprint is the football coach of the major universities in that state. And I'll guarantee you, that doesn't happen in other areas around the country. I'll guarantee you, it is a unique thing in the Southeast.
Well, I can't
Jimmy
imagine.
Sexton. Yeah. Don't be a Jimmy. Don't hate the player. Hate the game.
Well, here's something to look at. I talked to a friend in athletics administration on the finance side at a big SEC school, and he said, you've got all these big buildings, stadiums, basketball arenas that are NRAs, non-revenue producing assets, most of the year. So you need to start finding ways to rent them out, because I've said this for a long time. Athletic departments hemorrhage money like the federal government does. Okay. If they have a budget of $50 million and they only spend $40 million of it, you know what they're going to ask for next year? They're not going to say, we sent you back $10 million. They're going to ask for $60 million. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like, why is the cost of college tuition so damn high? Because the federal government is hemorrhaging with money. So colleges jack up inflation, they call it, 7 or 8% every year. When I went to Auburn, you could go out of state for less than $3,000 a year. Now that tuition is about $34,000 a year. Is it that much better? No, it's a lot of it is fiscal mismanagement, and they just you wonder, what are they paying? When I look on the basketball games now, and I see the head coach, there's like 2 rows of people behind him of analysts and assistants and rub down guys. I'm like, what are these people doing? And I mean, Kevin, there's no fiscal responsibility in college athletics because they know they can go ring the bell and get more. Here's 2 things that are happening. We don't want private equity, for the most part, getting involved, because they'll gut you and leave you on the side of the road and let you die comfortably. Okay. Not all the time, but a lot. Number 2, you're going to start seeing public finance deals come together to put bond deals together and loans being taken out by athletic departments to pay for all this crap. Because when Title IX gets involved and they've never lost a lawsuit, that's when the split hits the fan. That's what I think is going to happen. Let me say something about one of our sponsors, Winter Timber Outdoors, folks. And they are responsible, fiscally responsible people. Winter Timber Outdoors, Athens, Alabama. They're going to grow in the footprint that is the Southeastern Conference. Open every day of the week. Over 7. When you go in there, they've got over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns, ammunition, those Migra duck loads. They've got upland loads for dove hunting, for quail, pheasant. They're getting into everything. Migra, get it at Winter Timber Outdoors. And they got a staff of people that really know what they're doing. They're going to grow all over the SEC. So you live in the Southeastern Conference footprint, you're going to be shopping at a Winter Timber store soon. They broke ground back in mid-November. The store in Auburn should open by June, maybe earlier, weather permitting. And they got the Sitka gear. They got everything also for your dog, for your deer stands. Check them out. Let them know you heard about them on SEC Sidelines. And Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, folks, on that square in Collierville. The coolest selection of men's and women's boots and clothing. Filson, Barber, Duckhead, STS, Old South, Devil Dog jeans, the purses they've got, the luggage for the women and the men, it's exceptional. Duck camp, great looking stuff. Charles Hall and the team out there open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Guys, this is a really lively discussion that we're having. And Frank, well, I would, trust me, there's always drinking involved at a hunting camp and some pretty good yarns, as they say, being spun. But I just remember when Alabama, Kevin, won a national championship in gymnastics. This was years ago. They won a bunch of them under Sarah Patterson. They lost like 1.2 million, even though they won the national championship. Now you go to SEC gymnastics meets, and they are scalping tickets for like 125, 150 bucks for gymnastics.
Oh,
I mean, look at Libby
Yeah,
Dunn.
look at her.
Look at the NIL that Libby Dunn has done. It's off the charts.
My sons in Gainesville tell me that Florida sells out every gymnastics home meet, pretty much, which is just and you could see it. You could see the SEC. You can't watch an SEC basketball game on the SEC network without seeing the SEC gymnastics promo about 27 times.
Yes.
And Kevin, it was not on. I'm going to retire this cliche after this one more use of it. Was not on my bingo card in about 1990 or even 2000. That 99 Auburn basketball team was unbelievable, but it was not on my bingo card that night before an Auburn basketball game, students would get trampled trying to get in the game.
Well, you know what we don't see. Remember, we all remember back in the 80s, the Wendy's commercial. They had the woman out there in the gray, suit, the Soviet bloc suit with a flashlight. She walks out on the runway aisle, goes and put the flashlight on and goes, "Evening there." She's got the flashlight going. And the East German women gymnasts would come out there like, roar. You're like, "Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll give her a 10. But it has become so popular, Kevin. And it's really amazing. I want to bounce around and ask you, we got 4 of us on here and 3 really smart people. I'm going to try to do my part. But you look at John Calipari at Arkansas. Here's an example. They've got money. They're putting money into it. It's going to take him some time to build. But kind of Dennis Gates. Wasn't Missouri 0-18 last year? Man.
0-19 because they lost their one game in the SEC tournament.
That's adding insult to injury.
Exactly.
It's like your house catches on fire and you go in to get the last thing you think and it caves in on you. But kind of give us a health checkup, Kevin. SEC standings. And man, by the way, you just look around. There are no easy outs, and shed some light on that Vanderbilt story, because damn, it's becoming a house of horrors again.
Yeah, what Mark Byington has done is really impressive. Beating Tennessee, beating Kentucky. That's always been a tough place to play. I know Auburn has struggled there through the years. Alabama has struggled there through the years. A lot of teams have struggled there through the years. But it just shows if you get the right coach, and this is why the coaches make what they make. You get the right coach, you're going to win, because they're going to whatever parameters they're operating under, whatever the system is now, NIL, transfer portal, they're going to find players. There are players out there. And not to always bring this back to Auburn, but look at that roster. There aren't 3, 4, 5
superstars.
5 stars on. There's one 5-star on there, and that's the Hod Pettiford.
Yeah.
And he's played like it.
He looks like it.
As a freshman.
He acts like it.
He certainly has lived up to that billing. But you got Chaney Johnson as a transfer from Alabama Huntsville, which is a Division II program, by the way, which is number 4 in the country in Division II. We don't just play D1 basketball in this state. We've also got the number 4 high school team in the country in Hoover High School. But I digress. Janai Broom came from Morehead State.
Yeah.
He wasn't a 5-star. I don't know that I've ever seen a player develop more in his time in college than Janai Broom.
Yeah.
And so the guys have a chip on their shoulder.
For the people who, and we've all, myself included, have railed against NIL for the lack of structure around it. But if it weren't for NIL, Janai Broome would be in the NBA. And there's a lot of cases
that's Bruce
of that, Frank.
Pearl.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that is
I think it's Bruce Pearl. I think Bruce Pearl's at the top
also,
of his game. He is one of the best coaches in the country, and he develops kids. He's not just a great X's and O's guys. He develops them. And you can tell. I mean, look, Auburn goes back a long way. Auburn's slogan is Auburn is family. And that's the way that Bruce Pearl has put this team together. It's not one 5-star, another 5-star leaving. They're a cohesive group. That's why I think they're going to be a number 1 seed. And I'm telling you what, I would not be shocked if they won it all this year.
What Auburn people have always hoped is that, especially in football and basketball, maybe baseball some years, that we can get, when you say family, we're wanting it to evoke the fear of La Cosa Nostra family as opposed to a Norman Rockwell painting of family. And you can.
Hey, you got to get your coach to
you can use that in writing without attribution if you want to, Kevin. I saw you smile. But honest to God, this Bruce, there's an absolute intentionality to getting these guys from mid-major and lesser, not blue blood programs, and it's about being able to sell them on less minutes to play, because Bruce is absolutely committed to playing 10 and sometimes 11 players. In that last 10 minutes of games, you see the opponent, usually, unless they play a lot of guys, you see them wilting a little bit or their shooting falling off. Not every time, but it gives you a potential advantage.
Yeah. Well, the best example of that is Dylan Cardwell. If there were an award for teammate of the year across the country, I can't imagine that Dylan Cardwell wouldn't be a unanimous winner.
Yeah.
He's not going to score 25 points. He's not going to, he will light up the highlight reel with blocks and dunks, but not only is he content to play his role, he revels in his role. He gets the crowd fired up. He blocks shots. He takes tough defensive assignments down low. He gets on the floor for loose balls. When you got a guy that's willing to do that, and it is contagious, and the other guys, they bought in. Now, there was one freshman he's had some emotional moments. It's been hard for him to blend in, and Ja'Kai Howard, and he's immensely talented.
God, he's talented.
And I thought, coaches have to deal with a lot of things that we don't even know about behind the scenes with their teams. It's a long year, a lot of frustration. Everybody gets nicked up. Some guys don't get the shot, even on a team as connected as Auburn. And that's the word I like to use. That this team is connected in a rare way. But even then, the other day, Bruce Pearl talked about it and said he's, an 18-year-old going through a lot of different emotions. And Bruce said, and I'm 64 and I'm going through a lot of different, So yeah, I thought that was one of the most astute things I've heard a coach say. The easy thing to say is kick him to the curb. He's not bought in. He's not with the program. We don't need him. And I thought that statement, that conversation by Bruce Pearl helps explain why guys get better at Auburn, why Auburn has been maybe the best program in the SEC in the last 7+ years. It's certainly right there. It's because he gets these guys, they're connected, they buy in, they want to play their roles. There's not a lot of jealousy, not a lot of visible jealousy anyway. And it must not be happening behind the scenes for them to be as good as they are. And here's another thing, guys, not to make this the Auburn basketball show, but Auburn is 6-1 in games decided by 6 points or less, or 2 possession games. Last year, they didn't win a game decided by 6 points or less. They were 0-5. They have more wins in those close game situations already this year than they've had in any entire season since 2020, the COVID year.
Well, here's a question for you. And Ellis Johnson made this comment about Dabo and what he does, and we're trying to avoid those two, the two topics that everybody talks about. But he said at Clemson, Dabo won't let you leave. He's like, look, we made a commitment at your kitchen table to your family to graduate, get your degree at Clemson, to develop you, to build you into a better man. And he said, when they leave, he and the assistants will get together and say, we're not doing our jobs. Let us finish our jobs. And they buy into that. You know, Dabo. I mean, I don't, but it's a pretty cool story. We know about what he did at Alabama, and all, but I think that, and look at Mike McMahon down at LSU. You look at Todd Golden at Florida. Todd Golden scares me because he's so dialed in and he's got all that off the court crap behind him, thankfully. Good for him. I think it's a big relief on him. And y'all are right. People don't know the pressure. I heard Chuck Oliver say this to a guy the other day on his show. He said, a 19-year-old being offered a lot. He goes, I've been 19 and I've been 39. You've only been 19. You got to listen to the older people. I mean, Doug and Frank, and when Dave's on here, I listen. I watch these shows. I go back and watch them, and I take notes and I dissect them. It's like watching tape with coaches. How can we do better and all? But I'm going to tell you something I learn on this show every day is something new, or a lot of something new. What Frank said about the cost to run that women's program with Kim Mulkey, and she is like Tina Turner. She's just a badass, I was just listening to a Tina Turner song, Simply the Best, on the way over to Memphis yesterday. Remember that woman? You remember Tina Turner, y'all? She's pretty damn talented. The legs. Yeah. It was like she had to work. That was a lot of God-given ability. But remember when she would sing, it was effort. It was like we had Chuck Lavelle on the show last Friday from Birmingham. And how cool would it be if you could get Chuck to come play in your backyard for some friends and some cold beer and burgers? But what I've learned today is y'all are right on this stuff. And this discussion is Hall of Fame stuff. We're going to bring in Brad Bellamy, Frank. But go ahead, Frank.
Well, I was just going to say, Rob, she was a caged bird. Tina Turner with Ike, her husband Ike, was a caged bird, and when she got out, she started singing. Not really unlike Bruce Pearl, because look, Bruce Pearl has had a second shot at this. That's why he's given it all he's got. This is a reclamation project. I mean, many of us don't get second chances. Bruce Pearl got a second chance, and you're watching.
And he arguably got a third chance when someone in power Kevin knows where I'm going, fended off Stephen Leath, the idiot, the worst president in Auburn University
ever.
So Bruce, build a synagogue in Lee County, Kevin.
Yeah, he's amazing. Let's bring in Brad Bellamy from LandersFordMemphis.com. The #1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South. Brad, you're on here with a distinguished panel. Frank Duffy, Doug Dean, Kevin Scarbinsky, U.S. Basketball Hall of Fame writer in Birmingham. Scarbo knows, longtime Birmingham news, one of the best in the country. So say a little something about Landers, then we're going to keep this basketball discussion going because Doug is killing it. So is Frank, so is Kevin. And now you're going to knock it out of the park with Landers Fever.
Thanks, Rob. Good morning, guys. Doug and Frank, good to see you again. Kevin, big Alabama fan, Roll Tide. So I love your back wall.
Thank you.
Man, it's the last day of the month here at Landers Ford. Not going to turn a deal away. We need to close out the month strong. Lost a couple of days earlier this month thanks to the wonderful snow that God decided to grace us with here in Memphis. So closing out the month strong, but also really, really, really excited about what next month is going to have to offer. It's going to be Ford Truck Month at the back half of the month, but to start the month, we're going to have some unbelievable deals on SUVs. Just a reminder, too, guys, we've talked about it several times on the show, but electric vehicles, Ford's come out with a great program where we're going to have the Ford Power Promise. So not only do you get unbelievable savings, but also standard installation and a level 2 charger put in at your house. And it's an excellent program to take advantage of. So, Rob, you got to come in last week, walk through the store, meet some of our key folks. You got to meet Sarah Beth, who handles all of our pickup and delivery coordination guys. We got a full team on staff just to pick up and deliver customers' cars, bring them in and enjoy their time at home or whatever they want to do while we service their vehicle and save them from having to spend the time here at the dealership. So really proud of our team and everything we got working here, Rob. And it was great to have you here for a few minutes and just walk you around the store.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell y'all something. I've never seen a service department. The floor is so clean. It looked like an operating room in a hospital. And they will pick you up, and it's crazy, man. 7 a.m., 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday, closed on Sundays. That's the only day of the week. But look, I'm going to tell you something. People that I send out there, they say, you talk to Brad, and then he walks you through the process. It's easy. They've got a massive inventory. And guys, one thing I love about this, they put their money into a lot of great causes. They work with St. Jude. You mentioned Agape. So many great causes. Y'all are so blessed with the success that you've had over the years. But, you know, the owner, your CEO, your president, I met Jason Medeiros last week, Jay Newell in the service department. I met Cody, Sarah Beth. That's just unusual to go in a dealership with everybody. You talk about a family culture. They got it at Landers. So, Brad, I know you got some basketball questions, man. Absolutely.
Hey, Rob, before you do,
yeah.
Brad, you might have been busy selling cars early in the hour, but Brad, Kevin and Scarbo and I called it. Get ready for an Auburn-Alabama Final Four matchup. I just don't know whether it'll be in the semi or the national championship game.
Holy
man,
cow.
that would be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I mean,
I could almost I might agree to losing it just to get back to the Final Four.
Great comeback for Alabama against Mississippi State the other night, and you know, I mean, I'll tell you guys, Memphis non-conference schedule. I know we're talking SEC, but you know, Memphis had a lot of these teams. Missouri wasn't ranked at the time, but I mean the quality wins that they've been able to run up with Michigan State and Missouri and, you know, Ole Miss. The Mississippi State loss. I mean, the Mississippi State's a pretty good basketball team.
Yeah, they are.
You know, you guys were talking about redemption stories a minute ago, and Bruce Pearl and the second or third coming of Bruce Pearl, and I still remember that horrible orange jacket he used to wear at Tennessee. But
beautiful.
You know, another redemption story is, I mean, Pitino. You know, he was dead to the world. Got a little bit of resurrection at Iona, and then now at St. John's is, you know, got them into the top 25. I mean, it's, you know, the sports world is always full of redemption stories. I feel like everyone gets a second, third, or fourth chance, and you know, Bruce Pearl is definitely making the most of it with those guys at Auburn, and man, they took them down in Maui. I mean, that was a strong basketball team, and still is.
Yeah, really is. I mean, Kevin, you're talking to Rick Pitino, St. John's. I mean, you've met Rick Pitino, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that story? Yeah. I mean, I've got his book right behind me. Success is a choice. I still got it.
Yeah, I've got it in my closet over there as well. Look, the man knows how to coach basketball. The man knows how to win basketball games, how to build a basketball program. Yeah. But what's really been a revelation to me, has any coach at a current school ever embraced a previous employer the way Rick Pitino has the University of Kentucky and Mark Pope, who played for him there, the new coach, the way that he has praised Kentucky basketball and embraced Kentucky basketball. He was there for Big Blue Madness. I mean, it's amazing to hear him talk about it. He's already, I don't know if you guys saw this, obviously Arkansas and John Calipari going to Rupp Arena on Saturday night, Cal's first game back. Rick Pitino put out a message urging Kentucky fans not to boo John Calipari, but to remember all the incredible things he did there. And he's right. I'm really curious to see how he's going to be welcomed or not welcomed when he walks into that arena.
Ooh, anybody want to take a guess at?
Well, it'll be Kevin. It'll be easier in the sense.
Well, if you want to see a little bit, pull up the video of LSU Alabama in 2008 in Baton Rouge. That's going to be the
reason
reception.
It'll be easier for fans to be kind to Calipari because Kentucky's going to boat race them.
Yes, because Arkansas is not very good.
Quick.
Even though they took several players, Cal took several players from Kentucky with him. Frank, I went down a week early. I did this big story about Nick Saban's homecoming to Baton Rouge. The night before the game, I almost went up in flames. Literally, there was a bonfire where they burned Nick Saban in effigy.
It was the
when
tiniest.
I
It
don't
was
know
the
how
tiniest
much.
little stuffed straw.
We're a bunch of
I
crazies.
don't know how much lighter fluid they put on that dummy, but when they lit, I was far too close, and when they lit that thing went up so fast, so high.
Well,
I thought I
well,
lost
hey,
my eyebrows at least. I mean, it
Scarbo,
was
Scarbo, that could have been the bourbon emanating from the crew that was doing it. But you also have to remember the dummy was only 3'7". You got it went up quick.
They
Hey,
they
but by
better
the way,
be
guys,
careful.
can I tell y'all something? Can I say one quick thing, Doug? I'm making the call right now. Listen to me. In 2028, now I know Nick came back with a game day this year. Somebody even gave him an LSU jersey, but I'm gonna make this call right now. Everybody's hearts are softening down here. In the year of 2028, you mark my words, on a night in Tiger Stadium, Nick Saban will be invited back. He will be on the field with his 2003 first national championship. Because I can tell you, Brad, you never forget your first. You never forget your first. And they will applaud Nick Saban in Tiger Stadium. Something I never thought I would ever see. I'm making the call right now, and I can't. I don't know what year we'll be on. Whether it'll be Alabama, it won't be Alabama because they won't embarrass him like that. But there will be a game when Nick Saban and that 2003 national championship team will be back at LSU, and you will hear all cheers and no boos. And I never thought that would ever happen.
Why not?
I'm making a call.
Those fans, Kevin, that are burning Saban dumb image in effigy, they need to be careful. That'll get you some trees killed on your campus if you're not careful.
Yeah, Brad, jump.
I mean, I think that's a real take, though. I mean, I think that's absolutely going to happen. And I mean,
it will happen.
Think about how lovable Nick Saban is becoming on TV. I mean, the ads.
He's great.
He's great. That Verbo ad that he does is
amazing.
Awesome. I mean, it is so good.
Check-in time is 3. It's 2:55.
Shower is 5 minutes. This is not a spa.
It's I absolutely think he's gonna get cheered. I mean, it's at that point you're removed from everything. You're not still at Alabama.
Yeah.
And I think the Calipari situation of leaving and going to Arkansas, I mean, that was a marriage that was over. I don't feel like there was a lot of fans that were saying, "Hey, we want Cal to keep staying here." I think they were ready to see the next transition and see what was going to happen. And it wasn't like, I don't think there's a single Kentucky fan in the world that would look at that and say he left to go to a better program than Kentucky.
Yeah, it wasn't jilted.
It's one of those deals. And that whole entire transition tree, right, from Arkansas to USC to SMU, I felt like every one of those coaches went a step back in their programs that they went to. And so I would think he's going to get cheered. He had a lot of success, but I think a lot of Kentucky fans were ready to see something different.
And Saban, I think LSU fans, if I were them, I would construe it in the way that makes me happier. And if I'm a Bama fan, I'd construe it the other way. But Saban said that he considers leaving LSU to go to the NFL the biggest mistake of his career. And of course, Frank's going to say what he means is, I've been remorseful ever being away from Baton Rouge my whole life. And then Brad, if I'm Brad, I'd say, well, what he means is, if I stayed in college, I would have continued to enjoy success and more championships.
Kevin, and by the way, when the supermodel says they missed you, but it's 19 years later, it really doesn't help much.
Kevin, did you when Nick Saban came to Alabama in January of 2007? I mean, y'all should have. I mean, Brad was in Memphis. I was in Memphis at that time. The rumors at the Christmas parties were unreal, and Jimmy Sexton and people around him, it was out there in Memphis. I mean, I was told point blank, it's a done deal. Saban is coming to Alabama, and I said, really? Of course, I didn't have this show at the time, a platform, but they were right. The person who told me, when they tell me these things, I'm like, it was the gospel. Kevin,
when that big-breasted woman handed him that kid to kiss, my head hung as low as you could absolutely. I knew what was coming. Yeah, it was going to be brutal, dude. I mean, him at Alabama every LSU fan knew we were going to be in for it.
Well,
And we took only one solace when we beat John Parker Wilson in 2007 when Chad Jones sacked him on that play, got the fumble. It propelled us on to the national championship. We knew that was the last time we were going to have the upper hand on Nick Saban and Alabama until he retired. And that's the honest to God truth.
Kevin, that was similar to when the Beatles came to New York in 1964 and played at Shea Stadium. Did you get a chance to talk to Nick Saban that day or a day or two after that, writing for the Birmingham News at that time? And if you did, what was the interview like?
Well, it was unlike any coach introduction press conference I've ever attended. Certainly. I mean, everybody who was anybody in the history of Alabama football was there. They were all like kids on Christmas Day. They saw it. They believed that what you said, Frank, was going to happen. Yep. Not just that they wanted it to happen, but they really believed it was going to happen. The aura that he had when he walked in the room, it was different. He was different. And that day, what they did was they set up group interviews, one for the television people and one for the print media. So we sat around a conference table, and I don't think I had interviewed him one-on-one up to that point when he was at LSU. I'd been around him at media days, obviously, and such, but it was just clear. I mean, he set down ground rules, basically outlined his one voice policy. He was going to be the guy that was going to send the messages that he needed sent from the Alabama football program. Everybody wasn't going to be available to talk to. It was going to be a different environment than it had ever been there. And, obviously as a journalist, I bristled about it. I didn't like it, but I didn't really get a chance to sit down with him until that summer, June of 2007. I did a long sit down with him for about an hour in his office. I don't remember much of what he said, but I'm telling you guys, now this is as relaxed a time as a college football coach can have. It's in June. He's got they've got a little bit of a break. He sat in that chair in his office. Well, the first thing he did was greet me at the door. He directs me to the sitting area. He goes to his desk. He picks up a little electronic device and closes the door with an electronic device.
You're lucky the floor didn't open up.
And I'm thinking,
computer come up from the desk. James Bond.
Wait a minute. We were just at the door. Why didn't you close the door when we were at the door? He wanted me to know that he had an electronic door opener and closer. And then during the entire interview, and he's dressed casually. He's got loafers on, no socks. He didn't stop moving in that chair. He was folding and unfolding his arms. His leg was twitching. I mean, the nervous energy that emanated from that man was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was like his mind was going a million different directions. He's thinking of a lot of other things than this interview, but he was very thoughtful. He was very open. He talked. That's the first time he used the phrase that I can recall, that the difference between the way you perceive yourself and others perceive you. And he said, Terry, his wife, said with him, that difference is like the Grand Canyon. The way other people see, he was apologetic about, the people in Miami hated him. Oh my gosh. I don't know who hated him worse, LSU people or Miami people, when he left the Dolphins to come to Alabama. And he was pretty open and honest about it. And you could tell right then, whatever he said publicly, there was a human being under that coaching machine. And it bothered him that he took the hits he took, and his credibility took the hits it took because he had said, I guess I have to say it, I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. But I will. One of my proudest journalistic memories is the week before Alabama played off, the week before they fired Mike Shula, I wrote that they were on Nick Saban's trail. So, and I got laughed at. Jimmy Sexton went on radio and denounced me, and until Jimmy later realized I knew what I was talking about. I had some pretty good sources.
Well,
And
you've known what you've been
I
talking
was
about
on
for a
it.
long time.
I was on it from the start, and I've never walked into a press conference with a bigger smile on my face than I did that day in Tuscaloosa.
When the history about Saban's incredible run at Alabama, and you got to add the LSU championship to the resume, but I think Brad, I'd be curious if you agree. I think Mal Moore is a critically important historical figure, and it goes beyond just that plane ride in which he was not flying back to T-Town if he didn't have Saban on the plane. But I think, man, imagine what if it's Rich Rod, Alabama wins, they win with just about any coach, but I doubt seriously they have the run that they had under Saban.
Hey, think about this. Do you know who would have been? Do you know who, if he had said no? Mal Moore was coming back from Miami with a coach. You know who coached in the Orange Bowl that year? You know who the other two finalists were if Saban had said no? Bobby Petrino and Jim Grobe.
Oh, God.
From
By
Lake
the way,
Forest.
you're not
Lake
helping
Forest
my-
played Louisville in the Orange Bowl that year. That was going to be the Alabama coach if Saban had said no.
You're not helping my stomach acid, Scarbo. You're not helping my stomach acid. I got to go get my freaking Tums.
Brad, how do you see the history of what I was talking about?
I mean, so I don't remember if I said this on the show or not, but my wife's very first Alabama game was the last game coached by somebody other than Nick Saban. We were at the Independence Bowl against Oklahoma State, and it was her first Alabama experience. But I mean, guys, I think we would all be lying if any of us said we thought what happened would have happened. I mean, the Nick Saban is not Nick Saban without Alabama, and Alabama is not Alabama without Nick Saban at this point. But I don't think any of us, especially after that first year and the losses they took, I mean, you know, it's incredible just how that all worked out. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, some of the scenarios that happened that, you know, the LSU Alabama national championship game after they have the SEC champion, you know, after they have the loss in the regular season and the kick in the field goal game, the fact that Alabama got into that game, you know, that's one national championship that could have been wiped off the board if there would have been enough of an argument to not have them in that game. I mean, there's several of them that, you know.
By the way,
really
had
well
that gone
favor.
the other way, we were only one game behind y'all with the GOAT on y'all's sideline. I will take umbrage with one thing you said, Brad. You were half right on your comment. I don't think Alabama would have been Alabama without Nick Saban, but I think Nick Saban could have been Nick Saban without Alabama. Because I will tell you, I will go to my grave saying y'all's national championships are LSU's national championships if he stayed. Now that I will debate.
We
and
will
here's
never
the thing,
know.
And I will tell you this, and I'll tell you one other thing. Because this is a sore spot. Yeah, okay, the Dolphins were upset that he left, but you know what the Dolphins didn't have to frickin' do every year? Play his ass. Yeah. So we went on to win 2 national championships with the GOAT at Alabama. Y'all are on the clock, my boy. I'm going to see how many y'all win post 18 years after the GOAT's left. And here's the other thing. Y'all get to compete in an SEC without Nick Saban being at another school.
Yeah, but y'all also, I've said, Kevin, I'm curious if you buy this. I think we now can declare the end for probably all time of what we think of as dynasties in the SEC. And by that, I mean a team like Georgia, Alabama, or whomever winning maybe 3 national championships out of 6 or 7 years. I just think that's nearly impossible. And we kind of got a preview of that this past year.
I think you're right. That's a good point, Doug. Because of the conditions, because of NIL, because of the transfer portal, until they get some kind of structure around this sport that makes sense. And even then, you got to win 3 or 4 playoff games now. Not 1 playoff game, not 2 playoff games. And every time you step out there, it's a chance to lose.
Yeah.
And how did Lane Kiffin not get there? That will frustrate Rebel fans.
Florida Gators. That's why Lane Kiffin didn't get there.
Yeah.
Hey, Frank, the question is I feel like he's still got a lot of angst that's never going to go away. Are you going to be able to cheer in 2028 at Nick Saban? Because that will determine everything at this point.
You know, but listen, I've softened. Now, if I go back in my mind to 07 and 2009, and look, 2011, it's y'all's ass should have never been in there. That should have been Oklahoma State. Just letting y'all know. and we would have boat raced Oklahoma State by 35. But listen to me. I will tell you, it's getting better. It really is. This is after years of therapy. I'm just telling you. In 2028, I will be sitting my ass, Lord willing, I'll be sitting in my ass 80 miles north of here in Tiger Stadium, and I too will clap, because time heals all wounds. But on every LSU fan's deathbed, what is our biggest regret and our biggest lament? Nick Saban didn't stay and create the dynasty at LSU, because we would have had 7 national championships under him. I will go to my grave saying
you're entitled to speculate on that, because we can't prove it.
Yeah.
And in the immortal words, I'm about to be out of here,
Yeah.
of Rodney King. Can't we all just get along, LSU
Yeah.
and Alabama?
Well, and look, this has been an incredible discussion today, and that's what the SEC is. That's what makes the SEC so special, is this passion. If you could combine all this passion together, we might be able to have enough electricity to run a major city for a couple of days, because this is.
By the way, y'all do realize my first day with Rob was debating Phyllis from Mulga on the LSU Alabama game of 2019. That was my first time.
That was so
on
much
station.
fun. And Phyllis was a sweet lady. Y'all remember her on the Feinbaum show?
She was.
She told me, she goes, I love Tommy Tuberville. She goes, I had so many Auburn friends. She goes, but I think she had 5 brothers. And Phyllis remembered the old radio on the front porch of their house. They lived, in Mulga, out in the country at that time.
Victrola.
And she said, we listened to every Alabama game. Phyllis was a sweet lady, and she I think she grew up
fireball.
Yeah, she was a fireball. But look,
I got her to chuckle. This was the best line I think I've ever given on this show. I joked with her. I said, Phyllis, I'm here Rob has got you and I here to debate the point counterpoint for LSU Alabama 2019. I said, Phyllis, normally I would have been driving up in a 1976 Chevette. This year I got me a 2019 Lamborghini. I said, I'm ready to discuss whatever you want to discuss. She goes, honey, a Lamborghini? What in the hell is a Lamborghini? I said, this is going to be one of the funnest hours of my life.
Hey, I was just going to say, back to full circle this thing, the first question you asked. Brendan, do you have video from when Rick Pitino went back to Rupp for the first time? And what was that reception like? Because that might answer the question what happened on Saturday.
That's a very good point. We got to wrap it up. I mean,
I'm out, guys. Y'all have a good day, man.
Yeah.
Doug, Frank, Kevin, Brad, everybody, awesome. Thank you so much. This show is about a team, and we got the best team in the world. We'll be back on Monday morning. And let me say, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and find and every day smile as much as you can. Well, executive producer Brendan Martin, I'm Rob Brown. So long till Monday.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shopp's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.